This, which is the pressure sensor, is giving you spatial information. So there's 60 and what will soon be 80 different points of information in your foot that's telling you all about the pressure distributions. Is it too far forward? Is it too far back? Are you experiencing hot spots, which often correlate with pain or discomfort? And so really being able to merge this information about the spatial foot with temporal information about your technique over time allows us to look a lot at shoe fit, dancer technique and training, and ultimately our overall goal is just to make Pointe a safe and comfortable experience for everyone.
Christine and Kaitlyn, welcome to the Ballet Science Podcast. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. I'm so excited to learn more about PointeSense and your work. And yeah, just welcome and can't wait to get into our interview.
Thank you. We're excited to be here as well.
Great. I think to start off, if you could we'll start with you, Christine, kind of tell us about your background in dance and sort of what led to the creation of PointeSense.
Sure. So myself, like I'm sure many of your listeners, have been dancing for almost my whole life since I was a very young child. But I danced relatively seriously when I was in middle and high school, but I was never like planning to be a professional dancer. But it was always something I loved and just like a wonderful place for me to be and get away from some of the craziness of school and work and everything. PointeSense actually came out of a engineering design project at Johns Hopkins University. I'm a biomedical engineering major there, and part of my curriculum was to have a design class where one of the projects was really open-ended. It was take all of what you've learned about biomedical devices and sensing technology and processing and the software behind them and come up with some problem that's relevant to you that you care about and make a device to solve it. So at that time, I was working on my development in Pointe as an adult because I hadn't danced in Pointe when I was younger. And one of the hardest things for me was being able to tell when I was doing things right. When you're younger, when you're doing a traditional Pointe progression, you typically have a lot of supervision by your teachers, and they can really tell you when you're doing things right, when you're doing things wrong, and what to adjust. And that's not often the case as you get older, as you get busier. So from there, we started with a really simple concept of pressure sensing. There are many different ways we could have tried to solve the problem, but that was just what ended up working and what made the most sense. And as we developed it, it became more complex and grew in what it could do. And Kaitlyn, who was a good friend from the JHU Ballet Company on campus at the time, would be there hanging out at my apartment while my group mates and I were trying to solve a problem. And a lot of the time she would have a solution on her mind. So eventually we asked her to join the team and she kindly obliged.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Kaitlyn, take it away. Let's hear about you.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. So I've also been dancing my entire life, and I've been on Pointe for over 14 years, but I just graduated from Master's in Robotics Engineering from Hopkins, and in undergrad, I did mechanical engineering and dance at USC. So I've been kind of working at the intersection of dance and engineering for a number of years. In undergrad, I even messed around making quadruped robots dance, and then I was working on exoskeletons, and that's really what kind of started my interest in biomechanics. There's a time in a ballroom class I got a friend to just strap on an EMG harness because I wanted to know how their muscles were activating and working when you're dancing. And so when I came to Hopkins and this big medical community, I was very excited to hopefully tie that into movement in some way. And I ran into Christine at the ballet company while she was working on this project. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. And it really resonated with me in a personal way because at that time I was recovering from an injury. Got injured in Sleeping Beauty my senior year of undergrad, just as I was about to graduate. And I ended up walking across the stage in a boot. And I went to months of physical therapy, and it was just a hard process. It was really frustrating kind of on the flip side of knowing what my body's supposed to be doing, but then now with this impairment, not really being able to feel it as well, and then being kind of frustrated with being held back and obviously wanting to get back to where I was. So, working on technology that kind of gives us better insight into what's happening in a point shoe is something that to me sounded like it would be really helpful for training and injury prevention as well.
Just a little add on there. After we finished the class and thought that the project was just an interesting design project and would go on our resumes and we'd move on, we had a handful of articles published about it when we presented. And there was so much positive feedback from the dance community, as well as other movement types like rock climbing and cycling. And I'm sure people have ones in their heads right now. Um, there was so much positive feedback saying that people wanted this to truly be developed into a consumer product or for research or just brought further than it was that Kaitlyn and I really felt like we couldn't say no. And that was since then we've been carrying on for a little over a year now.
That's incredible. So first of all, just you are both such impressive young women in science. So congratulations on that. I'm sure you both have extremely bright futures ahead of you, and I'm so excited to see where PointeSense will go. But since you did mention sort of the press that got released, I think it was kind of late last year. It's funny you mentioned that because I remember when the Dance Magazine article came out about PointeSense, and I woke up that morning to probably 20 or 30 people had sent me a link to that article. Like, you have to get these people on your podcast and, you need to talk to them. And so, again, I'm so excited that we can learn more and I can bring this to my audience. I think it's such an interesting topic and an interesting problem you're trying to solve. And Christine, I love that you started or a point as an adult. I talk a lot about adult ballet and Pointe here on this platform, and I think people get very hyper-focused on helping, young dance students and professionals, and I'm always advocating for the adult population as well. So I think that's really interesting that this kind of all came about from starting Pointe as an adult. So I love that. So, can we talk a little bit more specifically? So, you've mentioned injury prevention and trying to look at certain variables, maybe certain things that are happening in a point shoe. Can you talk more about what exactly is PointeSense and what is it studying, or what data is it collecting?
Of course. So, PointeSense is a system that incorporates pressure sensing and positional motion tracking. And with those two sensing capabilities combined, we can get a lot of information about what is going on inside the point shoe and what the dancer is doing in space as they move. Do you want to hold up the sensor, Kaitlyn?
Yeah. So this is one of our initial prototype sensors. It's just an insert and that goes inside of a point shoe. So if I've got a point shoe, just kind of insert it and it's almost like a box liner. It's very, very thin. And then this connects to essentially what is like a little fitness watch that you wear on the arch of your foot, which houses all of the electronics to communicate with a wireless device like your iPad or phone, which will then convey the information to you in real time. And the sensing is hidden in both of this. This, which is the pressure sensor, is giving you spatial information. So there's 60 and what will soon be 80 different points of information in your foot that's telling you all about the pressure distributions. Is it too far forward? Is it too far back? Are you experiencing hot spots, which often correlate with pain or discomfort? And then the motion tracking is in the arch, and that's giving you information about transitions. So, like, how well are you articulating through your foot? Are you rising to point high enough? Are you getting over the box? And so, really being able to merge this information about the spatial foot with temporal information about your technique over time allows us to look a lot at shoe fit, dancer technique and training, and ultimately our overall goal is just to make Pointe a safe and comfortable experience for everyone.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for showing that. So that it kind of just looks like a toe pad almost. We put toe pads. So I guess if you wore a toe pad, would this go inside the toe pad or outside the toe pad? Or I guess when you've been testing this, sort of what is the setup in terms of what goes in the shoe?
Yeah, what we've found works best is sliding it into the shoe, so outside any padding or tights or anything that you're wearing, and it's essentially another layer on the shoe. It does cover currently about how much a toe pad does on the forefoot. We're working on our next iteration, which has a little more coverage up the shank, but the one that we looked at is about a toe pad. And the great thing about it is that it is less than a millimeter, about half a millimeter at our last measurement, I believe. So, of course, millimeters can make a difference with fit, but our goal has been to make it as minimal as possible and something that most dancers we've tested with have said they really don't notice at all.
Awesome. Yes. I mean, as we all know, point shoes should be quite snug because that's important that they're not going to, be too big or too small. So it's always such a challenge when studying point shoes to accommodate for that. And it's just so ingenious that you've come up with something that can go inside the shoe because that's another challenge. With some previous research, there's been some things with like motion capture data where all of that has to be like on the outside of the shoe, with reflective markers or looking at force plates, which is kind of, again, an external thing. So I love that this is something that goes inside the shoe, can be, fit to the dancer's foot and still wear a toe pad. And so that's just so fascinating. I just love hearing about that. So very, very cool. How have you tested this? So have you done any like official studies or has anything been published or where are you in that process for this?
So actually this summer is when we're going to be doing some more official studies. Before, all our testing's really been done at Hopkins on dancers, kind of in our area and us, obviously. And then whenever I go home, I always ask the adult dancers at my studios, "Hey, can you try this on? What do you think?" And I generally get a lot of interesting and mostly positive feedback about that. But this summer, we're going to be rolling out a couple pilots across the country with some players in the dance community. So we're going to be doing a bit more scale there.
That's exciting. Yes, I cannot wait to read those future publications and find out sort of all the results from that. So you mentioned kind of testing it, I guess more on like college age dancers, and then some adults. So I guess you probably haven't tested it. And again, I know from IRB, it's very difficult to test on minors. So that would, I guess, be a future population. Maybe now that you've graduated, it might be easier for you because I'm sure there's lots of like pre-professional dancers or, dancers who are first going on point, age 11, 12, 13, that this could maybe even become part of like getting fit for your first pair of point shoes or something like that. Do you see that kind of going in that direction eventually?
Absolutely. The really cool thing about PointeSense as a technology is how broadly it can be applied within the dance world alone. So we can use it. It can be used for fitting point shoes for, of course, anyone on the demographics. But particularly, actually, in our conversations with fitters, we've heard that it would be particularly useful in those younger dancers or just any dancer who's earlier in their point journey who might not know what the shoe is supposed to feel like or have the skills and experience to articulate what they want or what they're currently feeling. Um, and maybe the fitter says, "How does it feel?" And they're like, "It's fine," which "it's fine" is not the most helpful when you're trying to get a perfectly precise fit. So definitely in fitting, we've also spoken to dance educators who have talked about its potential use in those early years of point training to help catch bad habits as they're forming and before they cause issues, cause injury, or just become like lifelong weaknesses that are something a dancer has to overcome, as well as in dance medicine and rehabilitation, like in Kaitlyn's injury, in the process of returning to point and retraining the muscles, and especially if you, for example, tore a ligament and maybe different connective tissue has to make up for that, just retraining that process and getting your body to learn what to do in the right technique and tracking that. Um, yeah, lots of applications that we're really excited about, and we're always looking forward to hearing from people in the dance world who have ideas and feedback for us who want to drive the development. That's the cool thing about being in touch with our customers as we're building a product.
Has there been anything while you've collected data using your sensors so far that maybe has surprised you? Maybe you did some stuff on point or collected data on someone and something maybe was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Has anything been a surprise so far?
A little bit. Okay, if Christine, if you don't mind me mildly exposing you. There was this one time I was collecting data just between her and I, and as we mentioned, we have a little bit different backgrounds when it comes to our experience with point work. Like it's for me, it's been something that I don't think about because it's been such a long time. And I was expecting when I was looking through our spring to points that I would be just seeing from acceleration data since I seem to spring up faster. I was expecting higher numbers. I'm also a little bit of a bigger person, so that correlates with body weight. And I was interested to see that my numbers were a half to a third of Christine's, and all of a sudden, it made sense that why she was so tired from point, and it's like, it's so much effort. It's like it literally is so much more effort for her to go up and down while she's still developing all the muscular strength and intuition, and so that was just with very simple data processing, already a distinction in being able to kind of see where you are in your point journey and your strength. So that was something that I thought was just really cool to see without having to do any sort of crazy machine learning even, just on raw data.
We also saw, even at the very beginning stages, like version -1 of PointeSense, Kaitlyn and I had different pressure patterns when it came to what the data, literally what the raw data looked like when we were standing on point in good alignment in the same position, just from having different foot shapes, different fits, precise fits of our shoes, and different padding. So then we were like, "Oh, wow, we cannot generalize to the entire dance community based on a few people's data, because if we're having this much variation between ourselves, clearly there's a lot to learn."
Yes, and actually that was my next question is based on how many dancers you have tested so far, including yourselves and your classmates or whoever, what does the variation look like? Again, because as you mentioned, foot shape is so different, strength is so different, experience, age, there's just so many different things that could, play a role here. So yeah, I think as your sample size grows in your future studies, it'll be really interesting to kind of narrow that down. So within the sensors they are all over the little insert, so they're like on the tips of the toes, on the front of the toes, underneath the toes. So you really are getting data from all around the toes. And then I guess too you mentioned you're looking at sort of the pressures of the foot going into the box and then either currently or in the future going into the shank. So is that true? It's there really are across the entire insert?
Yes. If I just hold it up real quick, this is our current map of what we have. And this, as Kaitlyn showed, rolls up to pop into the shoe. So um, this section here is the vamp of the shoe, the platform, and the sort of the ball of the foot, so the bottom half of the shank. And this is the coverage we have right now. Each of the shiny spots is a pressure sensing location, and I'm currently in the process of expanding it. So we are getting basically like 360-degree coverage of the inside of the shoe, which is pretty neat. I think we've been able to see more commonalities and common trends as we've gotten more coverage. Would you agree, Kaitlyn?
Yes, yeah. It was back when it was 2 sensors, it was a very unreliable from dancer to dancer, but now there are certain trends that we're seeing in the data. But it is definitely a lot of variation because it's so dependent on how your shoe fits your foot or even how your foot is. If you've got large bunions, it's more likely to just be lighting up in the first place. So that's why we're working on collecting a lot of data and trying this sensor with a lot of dancers so that we can really come up with a reliable algorithm and a sensor that actually hopefully works for at least 80% is the rule.
Do you see it ever, or do you ever see yourself creating something that could look at other parts of the foot? So, like, we have the heel, right? And like the Achilles tendon area. Do you ever see the development of something similar for other areas of the foot or inside the point shoe?
Yeah. So right now, what we're working on is specifically from a fit and technique standpoint, a version that will extend up along the shank, but still work for many different sizes. So the thing about point shoes being so closely fitted, and some people start before their feet are fully grown, and then even amongst the fully grown foot range, that's quite a size range, and we don't want to have to make a different size for every shoe size. Um, so it's a little harder to go all the way up to the heel and not have it be too long or too short on some people. So right now what we're at is like a 3/4 shank length that will, of course, vary a little bit. But it definitely is something we've considered, especially from actually from both fitting and technique. All three fitting, technique, and medical applications have mentioned having more coverage up to the heel being useful. Just a little bit more of a challenge in terms of manufacturing, but not something that's difficult to design. And beyond ballet, it's also interesting to think about when we expand, what areas of the foot are the most relevant for different sports. Because maybe not every sport needs coverage on the top of the foot, but maybe they need it more on the sides or in the heel.
Yes, that's definitely true. I think your technology could be applied to so many different styles of dance and sports and even just everyday footwear, maybe too. So, yeah, that's the applications are sort of unlimited. It's incredible. So, you're going to be very busy, I think, for the upcoming years if you want to be. So we've talked a lot about the insert part of your device. What about the thing that looks kind of like an Apple Watch that you mentioned that kind of goes, I think you said on the foot. Can you explain a little bit more about what that does and why it is located there on the that part of the foot?
Yeah, so this is what we're calling the core, and it is really the data processing unit that allows for PointeSense to actually give meaningful data to your app. And originally, around a year ago, during our second prototype, we put it on a band going around the ankle, along with some little vibration motors. And we thought this was a really smart idea, keeps it away from the foot. And so it doesn't really interfere at all with the point shoe. But about 5 broken sensors later, we realized that you get a lot of fatigue from going up and down on point. Um, and the distance between your ankle and your foot changes. So we ended up making it a foot mounted device. Also, with one of our earlier media booms, we got the reputation of the what is it? The house arrest ballerina. Because our ankle band was black. And with the circuit board, it looked a lot like a house arrest bracelet that a dancer was wearing. And so, about 900 Facebook comments later, we realized something had to be done.
Yeah,
That
that was
is
definitely a hiccup.
hilarious. But makes for a wonderful story. I'm sure years from now when you're accepting some award, you can tell that story. The house arrest ballerina product. So, but it
Yeah.
so that it does you place it kind of like the front of the arch of the foot, or where does it
Yeah.
okay, that's where it goes. Okay, so kind of like where your arch would come out of the point shoe, I guess, in the front is where it goes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it's slightly out of the way of the ribbons, a little bit forward based on how I do my ribbon placement, but I know it depends person to person. And the interesting thing about having it now on the arch of the foot is we get a little more information about the dancer's technique because now we can get a lot of positional data about their articulation. So that's been an unexpected bonus to come out of this whole house arrest ballerina incident, but has overall been very exciting for the product's capabilities.
Excellent. That is very, very cool. And yeah, I think it kind of ended up being a blessing in disguise because, like you said, sounds like it might actually be a better placement anyway. So I'm glad that all worked out and that you learned that lesson. Great. So, what is next for Point Sense? I know you mentioned some studies coming up and sort of developing more sensors. Anything else on the horizon coming up?
Yeah, well, I mean, That's gonna take up a lot of time. We have a lot of studies which we're excited about. We're rolling out some new prototypes. We wanna return back to we previous when we first mentioned it, it had haptic feedback, and that's something we kind of pushed off to the side for development because we're already wearing so many hats at once. I cannot fit any more hats on my head. So returning a little bit more to looking at that feedback modality, because that's something that a dancer can use while dancing without having because you can't look at a screen, you can't look at a watch while you're dancing, but you can feel things. So it would be interesting to look at that, and that would need studies because haptics is a research field. Honestly, it's not really something in consumer in this way, and we're looking at some expansion into other sports as well, but we definitely wanna focus on ballet, and something I would like to see is how it can work with flat tech ballet flats as well. I just had a show last weekend, and I had a ballet friend who got injured, and the injury that she got sounds a lot like what I had, but there was really no way to prove it, and it happened during show day, and the show must go on, so she danced on it injured for 2 shows, and, well, we're just hoping it didn't cause any permanent damage, but it would be nice to expand our sensing to work with ballet flats and see if we can detect these things for them as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and I think, yeah, there's a whole market for that as well because, I mean, we have male dancers who are primarily wearing the flat shoes, and then, females wear those too. And then younger students, I think, yeah, to know more about those shoes too would just provide so much valuable information for injury risk, looking at jumping and turning and everything. But yeah, that's really exciting to think about and an excellent
Yeah. I
idea.
remember, I think April Fools this year, there was a dance company, So Dansa, who had for their April Fool's joke, essentially a ballet flat with built-in pressure sensing, that they had it was AI generated, and honestly, it was very possible it stemmed from one of the PointeSense articles, but it was just interesting to see the audience response to it, and there was actually a number of people being like, "Is this real? Like, is this something we can actually get?" Of course, there were a lot of people like, "This is obviously AI, and this is kind of crazy." And to be fair, what they showed visually made no sense. But it is an interesting thought about how our technology could possibly expand even within the ballet community.
I would say in terms of things that we expect to be working on, like in 2026, our primary focus that will be outwardly visible is going to be in the fitting realm. So we hope to be rolling out and be used in the fitting processes at local and further from local dance stores within the before the end of the year. And that's really exciting for us to be getting out into the community and get people to see it who maybe, aren't following stuff on the internet. And that's a really organic way to come across something. That's our first market is fitting. And on the behind the scenes, we'll be working on all of the technology for getting more insight into technique and all of the other applications that PointeSense can do. And then hopefully it'll be in the back of everyone's mind by the time we roll out into those markets.
Great. So I guess one question I have that I just when something you mentioned, kind of collaborating with point shoe fitters, which is such a natural application, especially at this stage, I think. So someone puts on the insert and, the sensor, I guess, is it a transmitter or I guess my question is, when they are, wearing it and doing releves or whatever, how quickly can you get, I guess, results or data or, like process data so that you can, on the spot, maybe someone's doing a point shoe fitting and wearing this, how quickly can you tell them something about what they're doing? Is it immediate?
Yeah. So the data is streamed in real time at a frequency faster than humans can perceive. So we, the humans, are really the limit when it comes to the processing speed of it, which is very cool. But yeah, the workflow would be they put on the sensor, they try on different shoes. The fitter will have an app, maybe on like an iPad, and while they're looking at the shoe, they can take a look at the app and they can visually see the pressure distributions and maybe some more interesting metrics like the shoe if the sensor thinks maybe there's some sinking or a hot spot or maybe the shank is too soft, it may let the fitter know, hey, can you like take a look at this? And then the fitter can do the evaluation. So we're not giving any shoe recommendations or anything like that. We're definitely still relying a lot on the fitter. The idea is just to give them more information so that they can kind of see what's going on inside, and kind of compare that with what they see and what the dancer is saying.
Very cool, and that's, again, such an advantage of your product, I think, is the immediate feedback because I know, like, with my own work, I did a lot of emotion analysis data, and again, when you reflective markers, and that just takes, like, months of processing and analyzing, and, so many people would come and do my research project, and as soon as they finish, they'll be like, "Okay, well, what are the results? What did you see?" I'm like, "I'm gonna have to get back to you in a few months," or maybe a year even. So that's really impressive that in your case, you can, like, someone can try it out in a dance store or in a studio or wherever and kind of get immediate feedback that can help them make decisions, address a problem, or determine a problem. And so that's really, really cool and very exciting. So you've mentioned getting so much positive feedback for Point Sense. Have you gotten any kind of negative pushback from any kind of dance teachers or point shoe fitters or just anyone in the industry?
Well, this is definitely something that Christine and I are navigating, is the kind of the balance of tradition and technology in ballet, especially. Ballet is a very tradition-driven form, and we're trying to bring in scary new technology, which is, I mean, there hasn't really been any technology quite like this in the ballet world. So I even just talking in the changing rooms, during shows, I get a lot of positive feedback, but then I also get a lot of hesitation from especially the older teachers who have their ways and are afraid that, adding in all this extra information is gonna be too much or encroach in some ways.
We don't wanna be overwhelming or trying to replace any of that valued, almost intuition-based knowledge that is so important in the dance world. But at the same time, we want to bring in this quantitative data that we think can really help. So that's been a balance to strike. I'm sure you've also navigated that in much of your work.
Yes, it's a common theme for sure. I think in just dance science across the board, maybe even science in general. We have people with their established old ways and then people with new ideas. And it's not to say we should throw out a teacher's intuition about what looks good on a student's foot as a point shoe or what they think is best. But, I think we should all be open to new things that can help, and give us more information. I think more information is, for the most part, a good thing and, help us make better decisions. And so many of us are so interested in dancer health and longevity. And Pointe is such a huge thing in that realm, trying to dance on point as safely as possible for as long as possible. And as you both know, if you dance on point and it's not safely done or you get injuries or and maybe an injury that ends you can't dance anymore. And so I think it's good to be open, but it's very interesting to hear about some pushback you've gotten that makes sense.
Still over like, pretty optimistic. I mean, back when I started Point, and I'm 23, so I'm not that old either, I wasn't allowed to use spacers at that time because the teacher said it wasn't traditional, and I developed a little bit of a bunion because of it, but nowadays, I think the attitude towards health is a lot more positive, and across the board, kind of the old ideas of just slapping Tiger Balm and gritting through the pain is kind of moving out a little bit. And so I see it in adult dancers who are starting point and are really eager to try everything from like the Apollo socks, to perfect fit points, of course. And they're very excited to adapt to this new technology, and young students seem to have healthier mindsets, at least the ones that I've talked to, and even professionals. I know they're concerned, and I know they care a lot. I have friends, who are professional dancers, and even their parents are a bit concerned about their own daughter's foot health because it's her career. So we just hope to add more tools to just keep dancers safe. It's a tough sport on the body. humans weren't really made to do ballet, but it is a beautiful art and something that brings so many people joy, and so it's worth preserving.
It's really an exciting time, I think, to be working on technology like this in the ballet world. There have been there's such a trend, like, not even in, like, the super fashionable meaning of the word trend, but over the past, like, 20 years towards developing, tools and designing point shoes from the manufacturer's standpoint to work for as many feet as possible in a way that supports the foot effectively, to make the technique achievable and in a healthy way. I remember a few years ago hearing at my local dance store that they had been to like the Point Shoe Expo and heard for the first time some of the manufacturers saying they wanted a point shoe to be comfortable. Um, I was thinking, oh, well, I've always felt like my point shoes are comfortable because you fit them well. But um, it's a really cool time in the development of ballet that we're seeing so much movement towards wanting across all levels, wanting it to be something that can be healthy, can be comfortable, and a career that can last for decades. I mean, Megan Fairchild just retired after 25 years of a professional career, which is crazy when you think back to how it would have been like 50 years ago. And just a totally different world, like Kaitlyn was saying, with just gritting through the pain.
So for these future research studies that you have planned or maybe you would like to do in the future, are you actively looking for collaborators, maybe people at companies or even universities who might want to test this product and work with you?
Yes, so we are definitely looking for collaborations in academia. We would love to do studies for our own sensing to figure out what's happening for point shoe fitting, being able to academically prove injury risks that we can notice in the patterns of our shoe. But we also do think, in general, point sense could be a very interesting tool for anyone who's doing biomechanics research in dance or sports, especially if you want to see any foot shoe interactions. So that's just something we would love to see and get officially published. So we're based in Baltimore, as we mentioned, but we are open to collaborations pretty much anywhere in the US.
We are also certainly open to collaborations with point shoe manufacturers and other dance companies, as well as hearing from and potentially working with either now or in the future um, dance stores across the country, dance companies, and studios. Those are places that we want our product to be, and we need to hear from you and work with you in order to make a product that will work for you.
So as two young, very intelligent women, how has it been navigating this whole arena, both in science and being an entrepreneur now, developing a product, getting it out to market and testing it? What has that experience been like for the two of you so far?
It has been full of ups and downs and goods and bads. I would say I am very grateful to all of the wonderful people in the Entrepreneurship Center at Hopkins and the community at large in Baltimore. There have been many wonderful mentors and just figures in that community. It's been really encouraging. But at the same time, there have been times when we go to an event or a competition and we realize that all of the other teams are all built of men. And then it just makes you realize that, yes, the world doesn't revolve around you, but it makes you realize that what the demographic and the makeup of the entrepreneurial world is. But at the same time, there have been blessings in disguise. Like when you're at an event like that, and there's one other female founder who's also working on a female focused product, then that's a really exciting bonding time. And we've had some wonderful mentors who are also women in entrepreneurship, and that's been great. Kaitlyn, you were recently at an event. I was traveling, but you were at an event where you said that it ended up being like there was a even mix of competitors, and then all of the winners were the male teams. How was that?
Yeah, so we've done a few things in the past few months, which has been very exciting. One of which was presenting at a student venture competition to VCs, which was a very interesting experience, and we were very lucky to be the top 6 selected to present. Yeah, ultimately, we didn't win anything, but, got a lot of good connections, but yeah, it was a little bit shocking, as it usually is, to go into these spaces, and it just feels a little more intimidating when you're a woman and dressed up as dressed up in a tutu for ballet nonetheless, so it just all eyes are on you, but it's just it's hard, but it's worth it, and there's a lot of supportive people out there. Prior to that event, we had recently gone to a student venture competition at Hopkins where we ended up winning, and it was very exciting to hear from the other competitors and even the judges already reaching out to offer manufacturing advice and really get us involved. So there is a lot. I'd say being a woman is kind of a blessing and it's both a blessing and a curse because we stand out and but at the same time we have to do a little bit more to earn it.
I would imagine too, some of these events you go to, they're not dance specific even, right? So
Certainly not.
that's I know from my own experience, that is always an added challenge is just not only, maybe being the only woman in the room presenting, but also the only person who knows what a point shoe even really is or understands dance and like the importance of a product like this. I'm sure that's a huge challenge that you've, on top of everything else met as well.
Even sometimes convincing judges, that we know what's going on or what the market size is legitimate. There have been times where the judging panel seems to have no idea how much money already goes into dance training. So they're like, why would someone who's just doing this as a hobby spend $200 on something that could keep them from breaking their ankle? And we're like, well, they're already spending $5,000 on tuition. So it's really like we're within the realm of possibility. And in a room with dance parents or even just people who understood that we're working on the same level as like recreational sports, then that would be a no-brainer. But then we sometimes like lose our opportunity to answer more interesting questions about our product and about our business plan and things like that because we are convincing the people in the room of the legitimacy that they might otherwise assume.
Yes, I can relate to that. So, like, I've presented at conferences that are like biomechanics conferences, which, that encompasses all kinds of things where I was like the only ballet person, obviously. And then I presented at like IADMS, if you know, the International Association for Dance Medicine and Science. I presented there where it's like you're home there, like everyone gets it and they understand. And you don't have to take the whole Q&A session, defending your problem. Why is this important? Like people just already know it and you can talk more about the nuances and get some more, constructive advice. So yeah, I can relate to that challenge as well. Have you done anything with IADMS or anything?
We have connected with some great people who have highly recommended that we work get involved in the Adams and who have presented there before and are attendees, and so we've definitely have it on our list of places to go at some point. And we were able to participate in the Point Shoe Summit last year, like 11 months ago now, and that was kind of felt like a mini version because we had this wonderful combination of dancers and teachers and fitters and dance medicine professionals who we normally wouldn't really be in touch with, and they gave us some really wonderful feedback. It was just a awesome group of ladies, as it often is, but that was cool.
Great. Yeah, I would definitely recommend iAdams as a resource for you. It is the conference is in Australia this year, so but in the future it is, in the States many years. And I think people would just be so interested and give you so much good feedback and things you could, think maybe things you haven't thought about. But that being said, I will say, I don't want to like bash like non-dance conferences or people. And I know you're not either, because I think actually one very valuable thing that can come from like when I've spoken at more general conferences or events is the questions you get sometimes are things that seem obvious to you because, you're a dancer and then but maybe to someone else it's not as obvious. And so I personally always thought that that was kind of something that can be very valuable, like if someone asks a question, you're like, "Oh, well, I thought that was obvious, but I guess it's not, and maybe I should have explained that better." So yeah, all very interesting, but there are definitely challenges for anyone in science, but women in science for sure. So, but you both have so much to be proud of, and you've done so much so young. And yeah, please keep at it, even if you get pushback. You've developed an incredible product.
Thank you. We are working hard and hope to keep doing so for a long time.
If anyone, I know you mentioned some upcoming studies. If anyone wants to participate, are you looking for participants? I guess it'll depend on where the studies are located, and I'm not sure if you can mention where they are or not. But if someone wanted to find out how to maybe be a participant in your research, how could they do that?
Yes, absolutely. So we are currently anticipating doing a couple little workshops and pilots in a few areas within the next few months. Um, First is we're based in Baltimore, Maryland. So we'll be doing some in Northern Virginia, DC, Baltimore area. I know that's kind of this huge blob because it's pretty navigable. Um, and we're also expecting to do a little bit in New York City and in the Bay Area. And also potentially one of the wonderful dance stores that we work with, and the owner is a wonderful advisor to us, is On Pointe Dancewear in Bellevue, Washington. So if we're lucky and we can make that work, even though we might be a little virtual, we might do something there as well. And we do have a website and a interest form for anyone who wants to be involved in those pilots, which I don't know what the best way to share that is.
Yeah, so I can put website, social media, or whatever would be helpful. I'll put it all in the episode description. So I'll just get that from you and I'll put that so that everyone can find it. So I guess you do have a website. Do you have any kind of social media following or anything like that? I know people are always going to be asking, how can they learn more about this? I think this is going to be a popular episode.
Oh, sure, yeah. So we do have a website. It's pointesense.com. We can make sure everything's linked with this podcast. And we do have an Instagram. We haven't really been using it. We If anyone is interested in social media and wants to join our team, would love to hear from you. In general, as you can imagine, we have a lot coming up in the next year. And so if anyone in the dance community is interested in being involved, whether that's in media and business or even has a good connection for us, or if they want to work on the engineering, we would honestly love to hear from you. Love to get more involvement in the dance community.
Great. I have a feeling you'll be hearing from a few people after this. I think you're going to have a lot of people very, very interested in what you're doing because it's just so innovative. Yeah.
We always welcome DMs, emails, whatever. If you pop onto the website, it has all of our contacts linked there.
Well, Christine, Kaitlyn, it has been truly a pleasure talking to you today about PointeSense, and I have learned so much, and I know everyone's going to be so interested. And if anyone has any questions, please leave them in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them. And I'm sure Christine and Kaitlyn can help me answer them too. And again, like they mentioned, if anyone wants to collaborate with them, same thing, comment or check out their email and their website in the episode description. But thank you both again so much. I wish you both so much luck with your futures, and I will be following you for sure.
Thank you again
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
us on, Caroline.